Happy 4th of July, yeah! 2024, Independence Day for the United States of America's anniversary. So it's Thursday, 4th of July, 2024. I'm Tanis Coralee Leonhardi, a she, her, hers of Seattle. This is my walking and talking video for the day, and it's absolutely beautiful and calm and pleasant and not too warm yet. So I was like, I'm just gonna do pacing in the backyard, which I've done a fair amount recently. And the sun's rays are coming through. See the sun poking through there. And so let's see. What am I talking about today? So Ukraine is probably, in my lifetime, I was born in the early to mid 1990s, the most obvious favorite country of, well, a lot of countries and or sporting governing bodies. And I was like, looking through stuff yesterday, and I was like, the Olympic Games have not been hosted in Ukraine. World Aquatics Championships, both long course and short course meters, have not been hosted in Ukraine. World Athletics Championships have not been hosted in Ukraine. European Athletics Championships have not been hosted in Ukraine. European Aquatics Championships may or may not have been hosted in Ukraine. And I was like, if they're such a favorite, where are those corresponding competitions? Right? And especially with the European Athletics Championships, they're number 14 in the overall medal table, and I've heard that the European Athletic Council, I'll put it, European Commission, European Committee, something like that, founded back in 1934. They started the European Athletics Championships. So since then, Ukraine's number 14 in the medal table, right? So they're pretty high up there, and there's a lot of countries who aren't that high up there who've hosted. I'm kind of like, where's the justice in that, right? Yeah, and especially since how cryptic the European Athletic Association or whatever it is can be with their planning and stuff. Number 14 is universally recognized as meaning Valentine, so it's truly meant to be. And more recently, so in the past decade or so, Ukraine put an ultimatum out there of us or Russia. Like, we're not competing if Russia competes. So then European Athletics Championships banned all Russians like me. I'm part Russian ethnically, and so we're not allowed to compete. So I'm like, well, you might as well establish that they're your first favorites, right? Like, well, I mean, that's already established, at least in the eyes of those of us who've been discriminated against. That is an attempt at ethnic cleansing of those of us of Russian ancestry from those competitions. So, I mean, it is pretty big, right? There are no peoples, there's no country more privileged, especially when aid enters the picture, than Ukraine, right? In my lifetime. And so I was like, well, since they're the favorite, and they're not only a favorite, so like, let's say Russia was let back in, and eventually like the European Athletics was like, you know what, maybe we want to try and make it right with the Russians. Well, then banning the Ukrainians ain't the right answer, is it? Right? Because that just reinforces Ukraine before Russia, right, as number one, right? If they wanted to truly make it fair, they'd have to do something that either removed Ukraine as their first favorite, like strip them of all of their medals, ever, any result, and that'd be a starting point, or, right, they just love Ukraine. I think they just love Ukraine. Well, and then make sure that it's not ever hosted in Ukraine. But I think it's a fit, right? There's the first favorite in all of this of first country where the country proposed us versus them, just us versus Russia, us versus Belarus, and the organizations were like, we choose Ukraine over Russia. You choose Ukraine over Belarus. I think so. Like, they can't undo that first favorite. So number one for them, eternally, chronologically, will always be Ukraine. So like me, I go, well, good thing I did not want to compete at any of those competitions anyway. Right? They don't enter my life story. I personally would prefer a place where I am welcome, where they care about me and they're capable of being kind and treating everyone with kindness, not just their first favorites. But as a fit for Ukraine, I think the European Athletics Championships are a perfect fit. They asked for it. Literally. Their favorite. The one they support through everything. And have named publicly for over half a decade now. Right? Yes. And then I guess too, there's not only did they choose Ukraine over Russia and Belarus, they also chose Ukraine over the country that actually pushed for the foundation of the European Athletics Association or whatever it is, and the European Athletics Championships. What country was that? Hungary! So not only did they go, you're a favorite over Russia, and you're a favorite over, well, you're our favorite, but we're going to compare you to Russia because we hate everybody like me. Tanis Coralee Leonhardi, she, hers, yep. So they hate everybody like me. I'm Russian, part ethnically Russian at least. And then I'm also part Hungarian. And so they also were like, in addition to like, screw Tanis that way, screw Tanis this way. Right? Yes. Right, they chose Ukraine over the people who pushed for the founding of the organization and the competition in the first place. Well, happy Ukraine competitions to all of you organizations. And thank you for making it clear you do not want me, Tanis Coralee Leonhardi, she, her, hers of Seattle, not even minusculely.